The first sign that something was collapsing did not come from a battlefield. It came from a single sentence spoken on a quiet Saturday morning, a sentence that revealed a deeper truth. The peace plan that was supposed to end this war never existed in the way the world thought it did. The air had barely settled when confusion swept through Washington and Europe, and that confusion told a story more dangerous than any missile strike. A story of mistrust, division, and a foreign power ready to exploit every weakness it sees. The peace plan seems dead, and the reason is simple. Russia never wanted peace in the first place. But the real crisis is inside the West. A crisis of mixed messages, unclear leadership, and political fractures that Moscow has sensed instantly. This is the story of how a single leaked document exposed the weakness of an entire alliance. Hours before the world erupted in speculation, President Trump said the quiet part out loud. This proposal was not final. It was not even close to final. It was a draft, a placeholder, a starting point that lacked unity from the moment it was written. His words signaled that even the White House was distancing itself from the peace plan. And that is when everything began falling apart. Because Washington was not the only place struggling to explain what the plan actually was. In the early afternoon, a group of U.S. senators held a press conference. They stepped in front of the cameras and told the world something shocking. They said the Secretary of State had called them personally and explained that the document was not a U.S. plan at all. According to them, it was a Russian proposal, a Russian document, a file written using Russian phrasing, Russian legal structure, and Russian political demands. It did not take long for this story to spread. And while it spread, another layer of chaos was unfolding behind the scenes. The Secretary of State himself was on his way to Switzerland for negotiations. He was supposed to present this plan to Ukraine and Europe. Yet senators were now telling millions of people that the United States had simply been handed this plan by another country and was now passing it on. That revelation opened the floodgates. Analysts began comparing the leaked document with known Russian legal templates, and they noticed something strange. Certain phrases appeared over and over, phrases rarely used in English international law, phrases commonly used in Russian legal doctrine. It looked like the entire text had been translated from Russian into English, and the senator's statement seemed to confirm that theory. For a brief moment, the world believed it. The United States was presenting a peace plan written by Moscow. Then Washington changed course. Within minutes, the State Department released a blunt statement saying the senator's comments were false. They insisted the plan was written in the United States. They insisted the United States had consulted both Ukraine and Russia. And they insisted America was leading the negotiation, but their explanation failed to calm the storm. Because their correction did not match what the senators had claimed. It did not match the linguistic patterns in the leaked document, and it did not match previous reporting that the Russian propagandist Kirill Dmitriev had been deep inside Washington weeks before the document appeared. The State Department's denial might have been meant to restore order. Instead, it deepened the confusion. A second statement quickly followed, this time from the Secretary of State himself. He confirmed the plan was authored by the United States. But he added something else. He said it was based on input from the Russian side and based on previous conversations with Ukraine. That phrasing changed everything. It suggested what many experts already suspected. Ukraine had not actually been involved in writing the 28 specific points. They were being presented with the plan after it was already completed, and they were expected to respond. This explained why Ukraine's president suddenly gave a late-night address to his people. He told them he was facing an impossible choice. A choice between dignity and an ally. He never mentioned the United States by name. He did not need to. Everyone understood. The peace plan was not Ukrainian. The peace plan was not even Western. It was a compromise shaped heavily by Russia's demands, and Ukraine was expected to sign it. The truth behind the confusion was slowly becoming clearer. The United States wanted negotiations. Europe wanted stability. Ukraine wanted survival. Russia wanted victory. And none of those goals were compatible. The next day, a meeting was scheduled in Switzerland between the US, the UK, France, Germany, and Ukraine. The goal was to rewrite portions of the plan to make it more acceptable to Kyiv. But all of this work was built on one assumption, the assumption that Russia actually wanted to negotiate. And that assumption was completely wrong. Because while Washington and Europe were arguing over who wrote the plan, Russian politicians were broadcasting their real intentions with perfect clarity. One Russian parliament minister said publicly that Russia would never accept any plan offered by the US or the EU. He said peace would come only after Ukraine surrendered. He said Russia was seeking total victory on the battlefield. His speech was not an emotional outburst. It was a message, a declaration that Russia viewed the entire negotiation process as a trap designed to freeze the war, preserve Ukraine as a Western partner, and keep Moscow permanently weakened. From Russia's perspective, even a reduced Ukrainian state would still be a threat if it was supported by Europe and the United States. So Russia's strategy is simple: destroy Ukraine's ability to fight, destroy Ukraine's ability to rebuild, destroy Ukraine's political unity, and wait for Western support to collapse. This strategy is not new. It mirrors the strategy that brought down South Vietnam. It imagines a future where Ukraine stands alone after years of slow military and economic exhaustion. That is why Russia refuses negotiations. Because negotiations at this moment favor Moscow. Ukraine is struggling with ammunition shortages. The United States is divided politically. Europe is carrying most of the financial weight. And Russia believes it can wait out the West. A former US Secretary of State once said something that explains this moment perfectly. Negotiations are a polite word for surrender when one side has no power behind its position. Ukraine cannot negotiate from strength right now. The West is not unified. And Russia senses the imbalance. That is why every mixed signal from Washington becomes a gift to the Kremlin. One day the United States says it will increase pressure on Moscow. The next day it is pushing Ukraine to accept a plan shaped partly by Russia. That inconsistency is the exact weakness Russia has been waiting for. And unless something changes, Moscow will continue rejecting peace because time benefits them. There are only two realistic ways to fix this. The first is the most obvious. The United States must act like a stable partner. It must stop sending conflicting messages. It must stop showing hesitation. And it must make it clear that Ukraine will not be pressured into accepting a deal written through Russian influence. If that happens, the entire balance changes instantly. The second possibility is Europe. Europe has already taken on most of the economic burden. Europe is supplying weapons while the United States debates its next steps. But Europe may now need to go further. If Europe steps up harder, Russia will no longer believe it can simply wait out American support. Moscow will realize the war cannot be won through patience alone. Without this shift, the negotiations are meaningless. Ukraine either collapses or the war continues for years. Yet even in the middle of this political chaos, there was one moment that showed what is actually at stake. The United States helped secure the release of 31 Ukrainian political prisoners from Belarus. Among them was an 18-year-old girl who believed she would never leave prison alive. Her reaction when she realized she was free stunned the world. She thought she was being driven to a forest to be executed. Instead, she was handed to Ukrainian intelligence. Her tears and her shock said more about the stakes of this war than any press conference ever could. This is not a conflict about borders. It is a conflict about survival. A conflict about whether an entire nation gets to exist without fear. While the world focuses on peace plans, political talks, and diplomatic statements, the reality on the ground is written in stories like hers. That is why Russia refuses negotiations, because they know exactly what they are fighting for. The question is whether the West knows what it is fighting for too. At the G20 summit, Russian journalists were blocked from entering a German press conference. Their outrage spread across Russian state media. They claimed censorship. They claimed discrimination. They claimed a Western conspiracy. But the world has learned something important. There is always projection in every Russian accusation. When Russia claims someone else is violating freedom, it is usually because Russia has already done the same. When Russia claims the West is destabilizing peace, it is usually because Moscow is doing exactly that. And when Russia claims it wants negotiations, it is usually planning the next attack. The leaked peace plan has only revealed what was already true. Russia wants Ukraine to collapse. Russia wants the West divided. Russia wants the conversation to shift from how to help Ukraine to how to pressure Ukraine. And Russia wants time. Time to rebuild, time to rearm, and time to destroy Ukrainian resistance. The peace plan may not survive the week, but the consequences of this confusion will stretch far longer. If the West cannot present a unified plan, Russia will fill the silence. If Ukraine cannot negotiate from strength, Russia will shape the battlefield. And if the world hesitates long enough, the war will not end with a treaty. It will end with the destruction of Ukraine's independence. That is the truth behind the leaked document, not the words written in it, but the power imbalance behind it. The world is watching to see which side understands that better, and whether anyone is willing to act before the window closes. Remember, before you go, we are an independent news channel that does not take sides and does not take orders. Our work exists only because of your support. Please like and subscribe to support our channel.